In the top right position, we have the blue Protoss player, currently teamless, currently 0-1 against his opponent. It is ToD. And in the lower left, the red Protoss, probably feeling fairly happy noticing the Void Rays are indeed good units. We do have Crank.
And ToD's going to want to have to think of a way to bounce back from that loss in game number 1. Of course, he built up a pretty decent army, but it just got absolutely crushed in the engagement. Crank choosing his army composition very well indeed, and just engaging with a slightly earlier upgrade as well. And that made all the difference, especially when the majority of your army composition is the same. Void Rays, of course, were the backbone of both of them. So I wonder if they're going to mix it up a bit, or I wonder if ToD is going to stay with the same thing, try and go for a Sky Toss mid to late game, and maybe just make a few small adjustments to his play rather than change his strategy entirely.
I think that in this situation, when you have gone down, you really have two choices, and that's, as you said, change your strategy completely or just try and do what you did before better. And what I'm really keeping an eye out is whether Crank is going to go for that early aggression we saw in game 1, or whether he's going to switch it up and actually feel that his macro could be where he won game 1 and therefore just do it to the max in game 2.
It's really anybody's guess at the moment. PvP is a very interesting matchup as well, more so in Heart of the Swarm, where there are just a significantly wider variety of strategies to choose from. Mothership Core, we touched on that in the previous game, has been such a versatile unit. It allows Protosses to defend a lot better as well, thanks to the Photon Overcharge, but also allows Protosses like Terran Drops, for instance, to just go in, do a little bit of damage, and get out as well with the Mass Recall. It's allowed so many different strategies to come to the forefront here that it means the versatility of the gameplay we see is drastically increased.
And I love that. No one likes watching the same thing game after game. No, do you remember when PvP, back in the olden days, was just who could 4-gate the fastest?
Yep. Oh, that was those were some interesting days. Not actually that long ago, if you think about it. The days of PvP on Tal'Darim Malta.
They were beautiful. They were, I feel bad, like at least the players had the option of like improving their micro or anything. It's the casters who had to cast those at high level I always felt sorry for, because you can only get excited about a PvP 4-gate v 4-gate so many times before everybody knows what's coming.
You know, I completely agree with you there. I mean, after a while, everyone knew that, oh, guys, this is a map without a big ramp. Guess what's going to happen just now? And we got a lot of Void Gate. Wow, that would be actually imbalanced. We got a lot of 4-gate battles going on maps like Tal'Darim Malta. Now, though, we're not going to see any more of that, not in Heart of the Swarm, with a lot of things mixing up. And the first thing to notice here is that ToD is going for a reasonably early Mothership Core, but Crank deciding to forego it for now.
And this was very similar to Game 1, actually. The ToD delayed that Mothership Core. He got the second gateway out sooner, and it's actually going for a very similar build. The difference being, though, that Twilight Council that's just been shut down.
All right, so Crank going for a very early Twilight Council here. It's being built behind the mineral line, and of course, with the Dark Shrine cost somewhat reduced as of late, DTs are always a possibility, but we've seen fast blink plays as well before with Mothership Core to allow Stalkers to get up into the main quicker and stuff like that. All sorts of strategies are possible here.
So, what is important if it is going to be DTs, which is unlikely now that we see Crank getting the robotics facility down, is that basically it's what comes out of that Stargate is what I'm excited about, because we've got Blink on its way for Crank, and that Blink is going to allow him to shut down most air aggression very well, and it seems like that's exactly what ToD is going to go for with that Oracle.
All right, so ToD going for the harassment-based play with the Oracle again. This is going to be very, very interesting here in Game 2. Crank, we can see in the meantime, has not even thought about going for a Stargate yet. He's starting his Blink research, he's getting his robotics facility up, and he's playing this, I would say, very traditionally so far. He's got 3 gateways up, he can get a healthy amount of units to ward off any early aggression, but otherwise his tech path is decidedly avoid from air units.
I get it though. Ultimately, I get it. That Blink is going to give Crank the opportunity to try and exploit some nice earlier timings, because Sky Toss has the same vulnerabilities as Terran Mech. It's great once you've got a sizable force, but in low numbers, it can be a little bit weak to big Blink Stalker plays or something like that. So Crank may just go and try and get a nice option. He's putting down those proxy pylons as well. Blink is nearly complete, and that could give him a good opportunity. But the Oracle coming in now to the mineral line.
And here we go. We have the Mothership Core providing support, for what moral support by the looks of things, chasing away the Oracle there. Total number of workers killed 3 from ToD so far, and a lot's going to depend on where this Mothership Core goes. We can see Crank with those forward pylons up towards the north of the map. He will be able to warp in Blink Stalkers en masse very, very soon, but will likely want to send the Mothership Core over there so that he has vision of that high ground. Does he have an observer out as well? Okay, yes, he does. So he's an observer also moving towards the natural of ToD right now, so that'll be okay. And the Mothership Core can potentially stay as defense while this is going on.
So this is where things get a little bit tough. It's all up to Crank now, in my opinion, because he's got the Stalkers on their way across. He's got vision of the high ground from that observer. He's going to snipe down that pylon absolutely uncontested, and that will mean that ToD is supply blocked temporarily.
57 out of 58, not a lot of units you can make out of that. We have got a couple of Void Rays already out on the field by ToD, but the Stalker numbers from Crank are getting rather large. He has a total at the moment of 11 on the field versus 5 from ToD, and here we go, an engagement going right into Photon Overcharge here. I'm not sure he can quite cope with the DPS from ToD at the moment, and Crank does indeed have to back away.
Those Void Rays did use Prismatic Alignment, which does indeed mean that they do a bonus 6 damage to armored units. But once that's worn off, there's going to be a brief window that Crank could try and exploit. Without Photon Overcharge, without Prismatic Alignment, that would potentially be tough for for ToD rather.
I'm not 100% sure Crank really wants to be attacking into Photon Overcharge, though. I think that's a rather difficult thing to do with pure Stalkers, especially with Void Rays out on the field, like you mentioned. That Prismatic Alignment going to come in very helpful indeed. And Crank once again moving in and immediately having to blink back out. ToD knows he has the upper hand here. Nice time warp, allowing him to pick off 2 more Stalkers there, and Crank is definitely on the back foot. Supplies currently 65 to 55, and ToD and Crank completely equal on worker count on 28.
The difference being is that, to be honest, Crank has got himself in somewhat a bit of a stuck position, but now blinking up, this could be absolutely huge. None of ToD's army is anywhere near. He was going for a counter aggression. We do see some pylons going down, and Jorasar, these Stalkers are going to get a good amount of damage done. Oh
no, and this, to be honest, was quite sloppy from ToD. I mean, he saw that his opponent had Blink Stalkers. I'm incredibly surprised here that he decided to allow his army to move all the way out and not leave anything at home. This one pylon is the only thing keeping these gateways alive at the moment. The one in the back isn't actually able to do it. However, ToD has managed to get his army around enough that he picked apart the vast majority of those Stalkers. But still, Crank's done a lot of damage there.
That damage, will it be enough? We'll have to wait to see. Crank has actually lost more resources, though, by over double this game at the moment, and that is the problem. So, as we can see, ToD gearing up for Wave 2, but so is Crank, and ToD, he's not going to fall for the same trick again, is he?
Oh no, and that pylon is looking pretty lonely there by the gateways. I think one of the gateways should still be powered by the one in the back. Is Crank going to go for the pylons? Yes, he is indeed. And 3 gateways do get unpowered, and the probes are being pulled as well. This is not a good situation to be in. ToD, in the meantime, moving up into the main base of Crank, where Crank's already preemptively pulled some probes, interestingly, just trying to buy himself as much time as possible. The Mothership Core is there, though, and Photon Overcharge will be used.
Now, the thing that ToD has that is going to be a massive advantage is the option of a mass recall. If it goes to a base trade, he can deal a lot of damage and then just pull straight back. And if he takes out this Nexus, his opponent cannot be mining anything until it's rebuilt. But ToD now trying to get some... Crank, rather, trying to get it up, but... To be honest, ToD, as soon as that counter-aggression comes, I reckon he will mass recall, knowing his opponent is pretty much out of this game, and therefore will be able to defend.
There's been a lot of indecision in this game as well. Notice that Crank is only moving his Blink Stalkers back up into ToD's base now, and the reason for that is because he thought he could come back and defend, but by that point, ToD had already destroyed the Nexus. So Crank sort of went halfway to what looked like a base trade, and then when he realized it was actually going to be a base trade, he almost wanted to pull out of it. That's made this game completely topsy-turvy, and ToD at the moment has a 15 lead in supply. Neither side has a single worker on the field, so the worker supply is 0 versus 0. The final battle is going to be fought out between these two armies, and right now, I think ToD's in a good position again.
ToD is in a good position, but the one thing that's confusing me is why he didn't go for a mass recall. He can see that his opponent doesn't have many units in his base. He could have saved his Nexus, and he's got enough money to make a few workers, which would have put him ahead. And then he could have just basically turtled up and gone to kill the rest of the proxy pylons when he felt like it. But now he's putting himself in a situation where actually he's got to go across the map to kill the proxy pylon of Crank.
What he needs to do now is either get rid of all the pylons, which he might very well be able to do, because look, there are still so many buildings left alive in ToD's base, or just fight the army head on. The problem is both of those are completely fine at the moment. ToD currently has a 37 to 29 army supply advantage. It looks like this could be in his favor.
Blink is done though for Crank, so if he blinks his little heart out, maybe he will be able to hold it, but we see now the Voidways moving up, but two of them are hallucinated, so that adds some interesting stuff as well there. It's going to be very, very close here now.
And the Mothership Core with that Time Warp providing a lot of support there. Is it going to be enough? Crank down to 13 supply. ToD still on 20. Crank down to 5. It's not going to be. GG, and ToD successfully makes it 1